Resident Evil 4 on the GameCube is a game that I come back to often. I feel like I discover new things every time I play it as well. Like the fact that the insignia building in the town has windows on the inside, but not on the outside. I suppose that's what could happen if two people design separate locations and merge them together. You essentially birth the architecture of the future. How that works, I have no idea. Anyways, the reason I come back to this game is because the experience is something I absolutely love. There's an overarching sense of mystery with every single component of the game. By far, the biggest mystery to me was the merchant, as I simply loved him as a character. Was he more than one person? Did he have control over his parasite? For those who have watched my last video on the subject, you know there are a ton of different angles that we can take with him. However, he isn't the only one that was a tad confusing. The Chainsaw Man is another figure that has just as much mystery around him as the merchant. Now, one may argue that the Chainsaw Man is just a type of enemy you encounter throughout the game, but I have reason to believe otherwise. Much like the merchant, he pops up all over the island. In total, you encounter him 5 times, and during one of these times, he is accompanied by another chainsaw-wielding maniac. On the outside, the Chainsaw Man is a stout figure wearing a burlap sack over his head. He wears work pants and an unbuttoned cotton shirt. However, the man on the inside is totally different. Unlike all the other villagers you encounter, the Chainsaw Man can take several shots without even flinching. The Plaga parasite within him has assimilated to a degree that is well beyond a normal host. Because of this, his strength is superior to everyone around him. Upon diving deeper, you can obtain a bottle cap of this character through the shooting gallery minigame. Obtaining it reveals that this character has a name beyond just being a ganado with a chainsaw. His name is Dr. Salvador. But why give a real name to a specific enemy in the game? Some of the villagers are also named as well, but Salvador is peculiar because he's deemed to be a doctor. This is where things get pretty interesting though, as this is also why I separate Dr. Salvador from other chainsaw users that occur in the series. Dr. Salvador is different because despite his increased abilities and further assimilation with the parasite, his body remains intact. He has a bloodthirsty rage that drives him to kill Leon. But he is also able to keep his cool when unprovoked. Every other chainsaw-wielding psycho we encounter in the series has a similar resolve. They can take bullets without being stunned, and it certainly takes a lot of shots to eventually bring them down. However, everyone but Salvador shows signs of bodily degradation from the effects of the parasite. The second Chainsaw Man we encounter in the dig site of the game looks like he has gone through hell and back, while Salvador still looks put together. The same goes for the Chainsaw Sisters we encounter if we take the left path after defending the house with Lewis. They appear to be vomiting blood, or some sort of entrails that probably would be better off staying in their body. Even if we hop over to Resident Evil 5, the chainsaw-swinging maniacs in that game look like their body, or more so their head, have seen better days. I think this is where the bandaging and covering of the face comes into play. The state of these characters and their parasitic link have caused significant damage to their heads, from bleeding profusely to possibly even falling apart. The parasite has certainly damaged their heads significantly. This is why all of them are bleeding and bound. However, Dr. Salvador is the only one who seems to be intact. Nothing about him seems to be wrong. If we take the in-game camera inside of his mask, we can even see that he has a normal face with a mustache and a beard. We can even look at the texture of his face to see what he actually looks like. Side note here, face textures are super creepy. Nightmares for days, man. Nightmares for days. So what role does a doctor who refuses to die several times throughout the game play? Anytime he is killed, he simply remains on the ground, and then he simply rises up to the challenge to fight us again. Beyond that, he seems to be at very key locations in the game. He's within the town, and he's also governing over the mining and dig site operations deep beneath the castle area. But why? What does his presence mean exactly? I think all these little details add up to paint quite an interesting possibility. Dr. Salvador was someone whose role was critical to the revival and spreading of Las Plagas. He more than likely was one of the people who administered the parasites to the town, as we see in the credit sequence. His role across the land was to act as guidance, and to ensure the parasite's revival was executed properly. This is why he is stationed in the mining area and the dig site. It is where his work began, and on top of that, it was incredibly important to protect it. He attacks you 3 times before you make it through the sacred area, and the last time is ultimately his downfall. Regardless of the revival power he holds, His body is typically riddled with bullets within a speeding minecart that plummets thousands of feet into the darkness below. I'd imagine recovering from a fall would certainly be near impossible, as the sheer force would more than likely obliterate him. Beyond that, if he somehow survived the fall, no one would come and look for him. He'd be left broken, bullet-ridden, and clinging to what little life he has left due to his superhuman strength, wandering in the darkness until the parasite eventually stole all life from him. And then in turn, the parasite itself would die or go into a dormant stage. With Leon increasing the pressure on Sadler and clearing out all the opponents from this area, the mine would more than likely remain empty for a very long time. Plus, I imagine no one typically ventures to the bottom very often either. It's masked in complete darkness, and would certainly be the tomb of our burlap-bearing Salvador. Well, that's enough grim talk for one day, even for the fate of a supposed serial killer that got dark pretty fast. Dr. Salvador will always be one of the mysterious characters that we will probably never have the answers to. Heck, the game's been out for 12 and a half years at this point, and I still find myself wondering about the underlying story behind Resident Evil 4. I like to believe that Dr. Salvador's role was important, although not outright defined in the game. He appeared in all these locations because he played a greater role than what it seems. Honestly, he may have even directly reported to Mendez, the chief of the village. It would make sense that he was someone who reported to him. It'd be a very similar situation like Salazar, whereas he had two governing henchmen that protected him at all times. Dr. Salvador may have been the one who the villagers confided in as well. He would then in turn report the happenings to Mendez, as the problems were escalated up the chain of command. Of course, this is all assuming he has a greater role than just being a chainsaw-wielding bullet bag. With anything, you can always overanalyze things, and he simply may just be a recurring enemy. I can't rule that out either, as I'm sure many people will argue that. However, in my eyes, I like to believe he played a decently important role within Resident Evil 4. But now that I've dumped on all of you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. What do you think Dr. Salvador's role was in Resident Evil 4? Was he a chainsaw-swinging psycho? Or was he more than he let on? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. And with that, thanks for tuning in to this descent into darkness. Perhaps you'll enjoy some of these other videos as well. Thanks for watching, guys and gals, and until my next video, cheers.